Just honored to have him on the Manning Report for the very first time today. Shmuel, how are you, sir?
Fine, thank God, doing well. And Reverend Manning, I just want to tell you how I enjoy your program, and I've met you several times, and you're an honor to your people, and you're an honor to the voice of truth in America. And I consider myself lucky to count you as a friend.
Well, thank you so very, very much, and I am blessed to have you say that, and all the listeners are blessed for you to hear you say it as well. We want to talk about issues that are going on we're at present, how the propaganda machine of Hamas and the Arab League and others, liberal media, and what Israel is doing to protect herself at this present moment. But my first question is this, and I think that one of the problems that we have is that we don't recognize that Hamas and Muslims have a mentality and culture of glorifying death. And by that I mean, right now the propaganda machine is in full steam, pointing out that many of the civilians that have died as a result of Israel defending herself against rocket barrages and missiles and munitions being stored in mosques, schools, and hospitals. Even on yesterday tried to blame Israel for the destruction of the Safir hospital there in Gaza. What I want to say is that most of the world does not understand the Muslim idea of the glorification and culture of death. And until we do that, we're always going to be jacked up by the propaganda. Does that make sense to you?
It makes perfect sense to me, and it's nothing new because, as you know, being a student of the Bible, it says quite clearly that Ishmael, the father of the Islamic world,
right,
he was called by Abraham. It said, Yado bakol v'yad kol bo. His hand will be against everybody, and everybody's will be against him. He is, from the first time he appears on the scene, he is full of blood. This is who Ishmael is. And this is why we cannot sit with these people and talk peace to them over a cup of coffee and a piece of sponge cake. It doesn't work that way. This is what John Kerry doesn't understand, and Hillary Clinton didn't understand, and nobody understands from the West. They think that we're sitting with some sophisticated person, educated in political science from Duke University or something like that. These are blood-thirsty animals who want nothing positive. All they want is death, destruction of every single Jew on this planet, not just the ones in Israel. They will stop at nothing until they accomplish that goal, and that is why we must destroy them before they destroy us.
I want you to give us your insight, personal, on what's happening with this present war that Hamas has started. And so, because I don't want to ask questions, my questions may not be leading enough. But before you do that, I want to ask this one question. I am noticing and have noticed now over the years that a number of people who hate Jews do so because of the power and blessings that God has placed upon Jewish people. Now, you just quoted from the book of Genesis where Ishmael was prophesied to be a warfaring man with his hand against everybody until everything is over. That's in the Bible. You can't take it out. It's there. Like it or not like it, it is there. If you believe God's word, then you got to believe that. And we see it played out in the Islamic, Arabic, Muslim thought. But also in the Bible, God says that he would bless Abraham, and that he would, anybody that blesses Abraham, he would bless, and anyone who curses Abraham, he would curse. So my question is, a number of people have problems with the power that God has given to Israel. I mean, if you look at the War of Independence, of the 6 Day War, and the way that God has blessed Abraham's children around the world, people have a problem with that. So now they look and see, well, Hamas is being decimated, and Gaza is being decimated by the power of Israel. But they're the ones that started the whole process. What should Israel do in order to please the world? Play dumb.
Israel does not need to please the world. Israel needs to please its Father in heaven and to have self-respect. You know, the former chief rabbi of the British Empire, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, said a very profound statement. He said, the world respects Jews when Jews respect themselves. And I couldn't agree with that more. We need to show ourselves self-respect for who we are, the chosen people, and the responsibility that brings along with it. And we need to bring the message of God to the entire world. When we don't do that, the world rejects us because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. When your bicycle doesn't ride, doesn't work, doesn't function, you throw it out. Who needs a piece of tin with some wheels taking up space in the garage? If it's not going to perform its function, you have no use for it. And I'm sorry to say that over and over and over again, the Jewish people are its own worst enemy. When we run away from our identity, when we run away from who we are and the special mission and task that we have in this world, many of the non-Jewish world reject us, and in a way, rightfully so, because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. We need to return to ourselves. And when we return to ourselves and establish the fact that this is our land, talking about Israel, including Gaza, including Hebron, including Beit El, including all of Jerusalem, and Nablus, and Beit Lechem, and all these areas, we have to say to the world, this is our land, and we establish rule there, and we rule with an iron fist, as we should, and we don't allow any terrorists to raise their head for fear of being cut down by the mighty God of Israel. When we start acting like that, the enemies will act accordingly. They only get strength from our weakness. And that's what we're trying to do at Manhigut Yehudit, which is Hebrew for the word Jewish leadership. We're trying to say everything starts at the top. When we have the type of leaders that are connected to our Father in heaven, when we have the type of leaders who are motivated by Jewish national pride, the nation and the world will follow suit. I assure you that that is coming very soon.
I got to clip that statement off as one of the most profound statements to be heard in quite some time, and an adequate and accurate and very powerful description of the chosen people of God, and why we're experiencing the things that we're experiencing now, and taking full responsibility for the blame. Absolutely profound what you just said. I do
because they always say that when a person has an addiction problem, whatever that addiction is, whether it's to drugs or to food or to pornography or to shopping or to gambling, the person first has to take responsibility. They have to say, I am at fault. It stops here. I brought myself into this situation. Now, that's actually good news, because when a person has the honesty to admit that they are the source of the problem, then they will also be the source of the solution. It's when you blame it on everybody else. I take drugs because of the society that I grew up in, and I gamble because I had a lousy father who used to beat me, and I do this because of this reason. You'll never cure yourself of that addiction. And I say the same thing for the Jewish people. When we cry because Bill Clinton used to give us pressure, or Obama used to give us pressure, or the United Nations is giving us pressure, or Hamas is sending missiles, we'll never find a solution. We have to understand that, as the expression here in America, the buck stops here. We are the source of the problem. Yes, I am taking the blame. I'm saying that the problems that are in Israel are because of the Jews. And that's good news, because if we're the source of the problem, we are the source of the solution. And the solution is strong, proud leadership that bases its leadership direction on Torah values, on the kind of guidance of our prophets, Moses and Joshua. We need to fight battles like that. When we have leaders who are leading the Jewish people in that way, I assure you, the Hamas will be brushed off as quickly as you brush off dandruff. It will take seconds, not even minutes, to destroy these bloodthirsty thugs. We have to decide what we want, and then our enemies will be destroyed in seconds.
I made this statement in the presence of Bob Unger and Chaim Ben Pasak, that when the Jewish people take responsibility and recognize who they are in God, chosen people, and began to respond to the authority that God has given to them, as did Joshua, Moses, and David, not only would it solve the problems that Jews are having, but it would solve the problems of the world. That we are all waiting on Jews to be who they are called and destined to be by Almighty God. All of us are suffering as a result
100%
of that.
correct. And that's why I get upset when people send me articles. Do you see what they're writing about you, Shmuel, in the New York Times or on CNN? You want to know something, dearest friends? It doesn't matter to me. I don't lose any sleep over what it says in the New York Times or Wolf Blitzer and all these haters in CNN. They don't bother me one bit. I need to do the right thing. When I do the right thing, you want to know something? In the 6-day war, everybody screamed and everybody yelled, but in 6 days, the God of Israel, through his holy messengers, the soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces, we did an incredible thing. So I ask you a question, Reverend Manning, and that is, how come in 1967 we were able to defeat 5 Arab countries with airplanes and tanks, and many of these countries had ships, naval ships? We were able to destroy 5 Arab countries in 6 days, but now it's 21 or 22 days, and we can't destroy a couple of thugs or hooligans of Hamas?
I'd like
What's
to know.
What's happening to us?
You've already given the answer.
I blame myself. I blame myself. And they don't have tanks, and they don't have planes, and they don't have ships. What's happening to us? Why have we become so weak? It's because we're running away from who we are. We're not fighting like the warriors of King David, as you mentioned so eloquently. We need to return to ourselves, return to our roots, return to who we are. And I assure you, Hamas is nothing. We won't even need to mention it. It'll be something that, as I mentioned, you brush off like dandruff. It all starts with us and the leadership. And that's what I've dedicated my life to, together with my partner Moshe Fagrin, to bring that leadership that I'm talking about to the state of Israel and be a true shining light to the nations.
I think worse than the war, worse than the answer to the question you just raised about the 6-day war, and now for all these days still can't win, is the fact that there is discussion about a 2-state solution. Why would anyone ever discuss a 2-state solution? Now, I understand that going back to 2001 up to 2005, that several of the prime ministers had entertained a 2-state solution, and Hamas had rejected that for Gaza. But why would anyone discuss that land, and even now what's happening in the West Bank and Gaza, as you so pointed out a few moments ago? That land should not be occupied. I mean, if you believe the word of God, now if you believe the New York Times or something else, then go and believe what you want to believe. But I think those of us who are committed to God's word ought to see this as the worst possible thing happening to what God has said and the effect of God's power upon all of us. There should never be a 2-state solution.
That is 100% correct, but the problem is that the existing Israeli leadership does not believe that the land belongs to themselves. They look at themselves as colonialists who come into Israel and they rule a foreign people, and they establish themselves, but they don't. There's autonomy. There's not. Anytime there isn't clear rule, clear order, that is when, excuse the expression, all hell breaks loose. And people on both sides die. Both sides I'm talking about. We must establish the fact that Israel was given to the chosen people as an eternal inheritance by God himself. It's not up for sale. It's not like a piece of property in Idaho. It's not for sale. It doesn't go on the auction block. It belongs to the 12 tribes of the son of Abraham, Isaac, and specifically Jacob. And this is an eternal inheritance that for 2,000 years was mostly lost to us after the destruction of the Second Temple, of which we are mourning now. This is the time of year where the Jewish people are mourning the destruction of both the First and Second Temple. And in the year 70, almost 2,000 years ago, the Jewish nation was exiled from the land, and there was a presence here and there. But through the grace of God, we returned 2,000 years later to establish our state, to reinvigorate our language, to build a Jewish army for the first time since Bar Kokhba, the days of the Roman rebellion. And finally, we are once again have returned to our land. And our land is the entire promised land given by God himself. This is not a for grabs. This is how the leaders need to talk. When they go on CNN, when they go on Sky News and the BBC in Europe, when they go on every program, when they give interviews to the New York Times, this is how the Jewish leaders need to talk. And they're not talking this way. So since they're not talking this way, the New York Times is having a field day. That's why I have no problem with the New York Times. I have a problem with my own leaders who are feeding them the type of poison that they are in turn giving back to me. So again, it starts and ends with the leadership. This is what we're looking to change.
How do you see this present matter resolving itself? I mean, Netanyahu is saying that we need to disrupt all of the tunnels, and there are many of them, and they have not discovered. They need to completely disarm Hamas, get rid of all of their weaponry, and to some degree, they need to track down Hamas's source of income and make sure they are decimated. And then, of course, they'd be willing to have some sort of an agreement. But will that solve the problem? Because I'm thinking that Hamas is just a part of what's happening. It appears to me that Israel needs to stand up to America as well, because I see Kerry and Obama and Clinton and others as nothing but smiling faces with daggers in their hands with the opportunity to use them. So what's your take on the solution of this problem, notwithstanding, until Moshe Feiglin gets the rings of power, how this is going to all evolve and turn out?
It's not going to be good for Israel, because we are going to give in to world pressure, and we're going to agree to some crazy kind of ceasefire, which is not a ceasefire, but is a surrender. You notice that in the ceasefire, we cease, they fire. It's ridiculous. It's a joke. When in the history of the world does the loser dictate terms to the winner? We should be the ones who are not brokering a ceasefire, but brokering a surrender agreement. This is what we should be brokering. We're not. And this is not going to be good. Yes, we found many tunnels, and I thank God for that. Yes, we killed many terrorists, and I thank God for that. But if we did not destroy the enemy, totally decimate themselves and their infrastructure, and completely leave that area with a victory, never to be seen or heard from again. Otherwise, all of this, or most of it certainly, was a waste of time, and we sacrificed many beautiful Jewish soldiers on the altar of world opinion, which doesn't help anyway, because the world is now going to begin war crimes investigation, inquiry commissions in the United Nations against the Israeli army and their leadership for everything that we've done. And as you mentioned, we blew up a hospital and a school. I don't know if you haven't mentioned on your show, Reverend Manning, that the word Hamas in English is spelled H-A-M-A-S.
Right.
Hamas.
Right.
It stands for, do you know what those letters stand for?
No, I do not.
It stands for hiding among mosques and schools.
Wow.
Those are the letters of hiding among mosques and schools.
That's
head. Hamas. Hamas is a big bunch of cowards. They don't come out and fight man to man. They don't pin their army against ours because they know they wouldn't last for more than 3 seconds. They hide among their own children. They hide among schools and mosques as if they're great religious heroes. They are cowards. And that is why they need to be destroyed. But they won't, because Kerry, yes, is going to jump in, and so is Obama, and so is the United Nations and the European Union. They're all going to jump into their defense. They're all going to give money to them to rebuild these tunnels and rearm the missiles. And I worry. I really worry what's going to be in Israel and for the Jewish nation. And that's why we need to get his leadership as quickly as possible, because after, God forbid, they scored a victory against Israel, they're coming after you, Reverend Manning.
I know that.
They're not going to stop.
I understand that. I understand that. Go ahead. I'm sorry for interruption. I'm just saying yes.
No, I'm saying that this is not people with any specific goal or plan. Oh, we're fighting over a piece of land, and they go to war over that piece of land. This is a bunch of thugs who, with their blood, are looking to really establish their religious fanaticism and extremism throughout the world. We saw it in 9/11. 9/11, the last two words screamed by the terrorists were not, "I love New York." It was Allah Akbar. They are waging a holy war, not only against Israel, but against America as well. And if we don't work together to fight this hate and this blood, we will all be in great danger.
Shmuel, we just have a few moments left, but would not you agree that all of Gaza is in support of Hamas?
Yes, and that's what makes them guilty. That's why we don't have to warn them and let them out. When they are in support of Hamas, they elected Hamas to be their leaders, and therefore they are the enemy. And if they will be killed in a bombing, so be it.
Absolutely. There's no business of roof knocking. I mean, if you didn't want Hamas there, certainly they could get them out. But they are all in support of this entire process. And the other question I have, we only have a minute left, but the weaponry that Hamas uses, essentially, who's supplying those weapons? And any possibility that American Weapon Connection could be supplying Hamas. I don't know that to be fact. I'm just asking you.
I don't know that either. From what I understand, it's coming mostly from Iran. But now Hamas has a new buddy in the country of Qatar, and Qatar is now just closed a major deal with the United States. So the United States may not be giving weaponry directly to Hamas, but if this deal goes through and they start giving weaponry to Qatar, Qatar will get it to Gaza. So those channels remain open, and they will refill their weapon warehouses quickly. God forbid.
Shmuel, thank you so very much for taking the time with us today to discuss this matter. You've been quite enlightening, and we've learned a lot spiritually about what's wrong with our world today and, quite simply, how to correct it. So thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being a voice of truth in the American media world.
God bless you, sir. Again.
Thank you. God bless you, too. Bye.